This video has been made based on the recommendation of the National Human Rights Commission following its open house discussion on the rights of children of sex workers and children from marginalized communities. Recommendations were made to the states and union territories, stressing on capacity building and sensitization programs for teachers to sensitize them to the unique backgrounds and experiences of these children and to facilitate better communication and understanding. This video has 3 parts structured around the various recommendations. Part 1 is merely an introduction to the terminology used in the topic. Part 2 deals in brief with the legal rights of the children of sex workers and children from marginalized families, be it national or international. Part 3 is structured around the problems the children face. It concludes with the explanation of the organizational setup for child welfare and protection at the state level and lists a few notable schemes along with concluding recommendations. It may be noted that this video is not exhaustive. We begin with Part 1, that is, the introduction. Who are sex workers? What are marginalized communities? And who is a child? As seen on the text, a sex worker is an adult who voluntarily consents to engage in sexual activity for monetary gain or favors. In India, voluntary sex work is not illegal and is not an offense. The Supreme Court has stated manifold times that sex work is a profession and practitioners of the same are entitled to equal protection of the law. What is illegal is prostitution, which specifically involves the exploitation or abuse of a person. We must remember that persons engaging in sex work are often from poor, illiterate, and ignorant sections of society who have no other means of sustaining themselves. Often, they belong to families and communities that have been practicing it for generations, unable to break social and economic constraints. A marginalized population is a group of individuals or a particular cluster who, due to various reasons, be it social, religious, regional, are socially, economically, and educationally excluded by the dominant population and thus deprived of joining mainstream society. In India, it mainly includes scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, other backward classes, senior citizens, differently abled, nomadic, semi-nomadic, transgender persons, and beggars. Next, we look at who constitutes a child. We can see from the text that a child is defined differently in each act. For example, the Child Labor Act defines a child as someone who has not yet completed 14 years of age. As such, it is necessary to refer to the statute concerned. However, most acts define a child as anyone under the age of 18 years. We will now move on to part 2 of the video, which deals with legal rights. Under Indian law, a child, regardless of origin, enjoys all fundamental rights guaranteed under the Indian Constitution. However, we shall go through only key rights. Specifically, we note that a child has the right to equality before the law and the equal protection of the laws in India. Under Article 15 of the Indian Constitution, a child cannot be discriminated against on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. Article 15(3) provides that the state can make special provisions for women and children. All children enjoy the right to freedom of speech and expression, the right to life and personal liberty, the right to free and compulsory education to all children of the age to 14 years. Children also possess the right against trafficking and forced labor, the right against any hazardous employment or in any factory or mine unsuited to their age. Children are to be given opportunities and facilities to develop in a healthy manner and in conditions of freedom and dignity, and their childhood and youth must be protected against exploitation and against moral and material abandonment. Children also enjoy statutory rights and protections. Foremost among them is the Juvenile Justice Act 2015. The Act recognizes 2 categories of children: children in conflict with the law and children in need of care and protection. The Act lays down fundamental principles of care and protection of children. It provides for the creation of juvenile justice boards, child welfare committees, and for the rehabilitation and reintegration of children covered under the Act. It also lists offences committed against children. Example, corporal punishment. It also provides a provision for the establishment of various homes where children covered under the Act are kept for their development, treatment, welfare, rehabilitation, and reintegration. Example, observation homes, special homes, or children homes. Children also have the right to maintenance from their parents. The law provides for a presumption of legitimacy to a child born to a married couple. Forced child labor and trafficking is prohibited under the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act 1956. Under the Right to Education Act, every child aged 6 to 14 years, that is, from the 1st to 8th standard, has the right to free and compulsory education by the state, irrespective of gender, caste, or socio-economic status. Private schools are required to reserve 25% of the entry-level seats for free for children from economically weaker and disadvantaged sections. Children are also entitled to free legal aid. Children are prohibited from being employed in hazardous occupations. Children aged 6 to 14 years are entitled to a nutritious meal free of charge. The Government of India has also adopted several national policies in relation to children. The National Policy for Children lays down that the state shall provide adequate services towards children, both before and after birth and during the growing stages, for their full physical, mental, and social development. The measures suggested include, amongst others, a comprehensive health program, supplementary nutrition for mothers and children, free and compulsory education for all children up to the age of 14 years, promotion of physical education and recreational activities, special consideration for children of weaker sections including scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, and prevention of exploitation of children, etc. Under international law, international conventions, commonly referred to as treaties, are legally binding instruments given various names, such as Charter, Protocol, Pact, among others, and govern the rights, duties, and obligations of participating states, that is, countries. Treaties are only binding upon states that choose to ratify the treaty. Important treaties that India is signatory to or has ratified are the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and conventions by the International Labour Organization. These treaties and conventions provide extensive rights and protections to children. We now go to part 3, which deals with sensitization. Children of sex workers face several obstacles. They often grow up in broken households without a father and are unfamiliar with normal family structures. They are denied admission to schools due to lack of birth certificates, absence of their father's name, and social stigma. These children are expected to be breadwinners and lack support from parents for their education. Due to a lack of belief in the possibility of change at school, they face discrimination in the hands of both teachers and students. They are often ostracized and excluded by other children. All these factors deprive the child of confidence to speak out in the classroom or participate in activities. Children are also teased about the profession of their parents. These factors lead to the high dropout rates of children of sex workers and pits them in a dangerous position of joining the flesh trade. Children from marginalized communities face discrimination and oppression by other children and teachers due to physical, cultural, or religious characteristics that set them apart and which are disliked by dominant groups. These children are likely to be from poor communities with little access to basic education and are often working children. They are also ostracized and treated differently by teachers and students alike. At a primary school in Uttar Pradesh, the school's principal told Human Rights Watch, an NGO, that the tribal students were a big problem, stating that their main aim was to come and eat and not to study. Unsurprisingly, these children lack confidence to voice their opinions or participate in group activities due to pervasive systemic exclusion. We shall now look at the factors proven to be crucial to the retention of children in school. Lower dropout rates amongst children are associated with factors as simple as having an impartial, cooperative, and sensitive teacher, or children from other communities being friendly, and provision for playtime and space in school along with clean drinking water. Counseling parents to understand the importance of education and the needs of their children, and vocational training to children are also useful factors. Here are a few rulings laid down by the Supreme Court on the issues discussed earlier. We see that father's name is not mandatory for admission in schools, passport, or birth certificates of children. As such, schools should not deny admission to children for using the name of the mother or the guardian. The Supreme Court has also upheld the provision for 25% reservation in private schools at entry level under the Right to Education Act as constitutional. The next section deals with state mechanisms. The Child Protection Services Scheme is implemented by the Department of Social Welfare. Child-related issues are to be reported first to the District Child Protection Units, Child Welfare Committees, and Special Juvenile Police Units in the respective districts. The Child Helpline number 1098 under Childline has now been subsumed under the Child Protection Services Scheme. The organizational framework of the child protection services in the state may be seen here for easier understanding. The state also implements other schemes under various departments. Viewers may already be familiar with the midday meal scheme. The Eklavya Model Residential School Scheme is a scheme for making model residential schools for Indian tribals, that is, scheduled tribes, across India. There are reportedly only 3 such schools in Nagaland, with 19 deemed non-functional. The Integrated Child Development Services Scheme is to improve the nutritional and health status of children up to the age of 6 years, as well as pregnant and lactating mothers. Under the National Child Labour Project Scheme, schools are established for children below the age of 14 who are employed in those occupations and processes which are listed under the hazardous category in the Child Labour Act 1986. The scheme was launched in Dimapur by the Department of Labour in 2008. Children from marginalised groups can also avail of various scholarships and grants provided by the central and state governments. Lastly, in conclusion, the following recommendations may be made and kept in mind. 1. Develop clear standards for monitoring children at risk of dropping out, with measures to ensure that children who have left school can return. 2. Develop mechanisms to ensure relevant authorities engage appropriately with children of sex workers and children from marginalized communities. 3. Develop clear indicators to improve the detection and response to discrimination in schools. 4. Develop mechanisms to ensure streamlined admission processes for children of sex workers and children from marginalized communities. 5. Develop guidelines and manuals for teachers that set forth good practices for social inclusion and equity, such as encouraging children from marginalized communities to participate in school activities, ensuring more frequent collaboration between children of different castes and classes, and promoting innovative activities aimed at inclusion. 6. Consistent follow-up, that is to monitor progress and provide feedback regularly.